Hi, this is Phil Fitness with a Phil Fitness update. You're listening to the Rogue Monkey podcast.
Hello listeners and viewers, thank you for joining us for episode 96. My name's Kevin and I'm the host of the Rogue Monkey podcast. For anyone new to the show, our podcast is here to share those stories that will help you find your way, personally, professionally or academically. We speak to people from all walks of life and explore how they've overcome hurdles and navigated their journey on the path to success. In our second season of the show, we spoke to both a coach and an athlete in a two-part special who live in the world of Ironman. This is a brutally long-distance triathlon encompassing a 3.8 kilometre swim, 180 kilometre bike ride and a marathon to finish it off. For even the most elite athletes, it's a daunting task, but for us normal folk, it's a truly staggering feat to even consider. My guest today is just that, a normal guy, but he's someone who's done incredible things. First and foremost, he's a dad, a husband, and he's also a keen triathlete. To paint the picture, when we came out of the first year of the pandemic, our guest today, Phil, could manage one length of a swimming pool at the gym before stopping for a rest. Fast forward to the summer of 2023 and Phil has completed his first Ironman, which kicked off with a 3.8 kilometre sea swim in Copenhagen. Now in today's chat, we're going to explore his journey from over a decade ago through to achieving his goal last summer. We dive into the world of Ironman again, but this time how a normal guy achieves something truly incredible, something that less than 1% of the population will ever complete. So let's get into it and our conversation with triathlete Phil Towersey, and episode 96 of the Rogue Monkey podcast, The Ironman Journey, Always Forwards.
Phil, hello. Welcome to the Rogue Monkey podcast. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm excited to share my story and talk to you about it. In fact, it's interesting. I've not had any time to reflect on it. I was talking to somebody earlier, and this is going to be the first opportunity I've had to actually reflect properly.
Well, reflect, but also capture it, because I think the further you get away from the experience that you've had, it can be quite rose-tinted, but also you forget some of the little funny things that happened. And we were talking about those before we started recording. But let's get cracking. Some people have never come across your story before. So to start with, before we get into your sporting journey, who is Phil?
Who is Phil? Who is Phil? It's a good question. In the context of this, I'm just your run-of-the-mill average 30-something-year-old, late 30s. Dad who I was very keen on sport early in my life. You know, played a lot of hockey and used to sprint, so really enjoyed the kind of being fit and healthy when I was younger. Dropped out when I got to about 18, as a lot of 18-year-olds do. They find other things. And then, tried to get back into sport in general later on in life. Actually started working at a gym, so that kind of got me. And that was a conscious decision, actually, to try and reshape my life. We can maybe cover that on the early days on another podcast. But we started working with the gym, met a guy who had done an Ironman, and that blew my mind just thinking about what an Ironman is. And then, for the next 10 years, started doing a few triathlons and started to slowly get back into sport. So, I mean, to give you a concise answer, I'm just an average bloke getting into not average things.
Yeah, and it's very much a not average thing. And we'll come on to the Ironman shortly. But I think that the disciplines aspect of a triathlon is something that most people can usually do one of the three. And I think you often do one and then perhaps do a second one, and people go, have you ever thought about doing a triathlon? Yeah. And then before you know it, it snowballs. So, and some of those disciplines don't come naturally to a lot of people. So let's talk about your journey through those three disciplines, because most people in some capacity can do one, but to suddenly develop three is quite a hard thing to do.
Well, I guess I've never actually, it's only now I can say, I'm quite a confident swim, bike and runner. Although some others would probably disagree. But I've not really got a swimming, biking or a running background at all. I mean, like I say, I alluded to it earlier. I mean, I was really into sport when I was younger. I learned how to swim at quite a young age. And my dad tells a story about how I decided to take off my armbands and stuff like that when I was younger. But really, I stopped swimming when I was about 10 or 11, I guess. From a cycling point of view, again, I got into that probably in my 20s. Cycling is an expensive thing, I guess. You know, you have to buy the bike and all the kit around it. So I didn't really have a cycling background. And then running, I mean, yeah, I've always been I mentioned a second ago, a sprinter. But endurance, I mean, anything more than like 400 meters, not a joke, like that was long distance for me. So kind of turning that into, even doing a 5K, you know, used to be really, I was super chuffed to do it. So yeah, I've not got a background in triathlon or endurance or long distance stuff in any way, shape or form.
But then joining, I guess, the gym and having some of the facilities, if you like, on tap to a point, at what point did it go from perhaps an idea or being your mind blown just the thought of a triathlon, let alone a full Ironman? When was the first kind of seed sown for you to actually go, I might actually take a step forwards with this myself as a participant?
In Ironman or triathlon?
Let's start with triathlon.
Well, so yeah, I met a guy at the gym who said he'd done an Ironman, and that just again blew my mind when he talked through the distances and what he had to do and that kind of stuff. So I guess that was the seed. But looking at this guy, I thought he was some kind of superhero. Like, how could you do that? That's unbelievable. You know, I think he did it in quite a respectable time as well. You know, like 10, 11 hours, something like that, less than 12, I think. So that was the seed sown. And then I think I've got one of these brains that enjoys doing what I deem cool stuff. So I thought, oh, that's cool. I've got to give that a go. So I didn't have a bike at the time, couldn't swim more than 25 meters. And my running, again, I think at about that point, it was just the odd 10, 15 minute warm up on a treadmill, really. So that was kind of the seed zone. And then I think there was a swimming coach called Victoria who got a few of us together who had this idea of maybe doing a triathlon, and said, oh, look, come together, you know, well, I'll teach you how to swim, basically. So started learning with her probably about 10 years ago, and then entered the Dorney Lake. It was like an Wednesday evening series. So a real beginner's basic, not many people there. I think there's about 100 people there or something. So entered that. Again, it was about 50 quid to enter it as well. So it wasn't too prohibitive to actually get into it. And then, yeah, that was the kind of the first triathlon I did. So that was my first venture into triathlon. And it was awful. It was like everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. And I remember getting into the water thinking, like, what am I doing? I'm never going to be able to get around this. So I started right at the back of the pack. Soon I swam into the middle of the pack, and then I was, you know, that typical triathlon thing. I was getting punched and pulled. Someone pulled my leg in the water. I thought, you know, that was ridiculous. I complained to one of the guys when I finally got out to swim. They didn't really care. Got on the bike, went round Dorney Lake as fast as I possibly could, getting overtaken by literally everybody. I think I was the last on the bike by about 2 or 3 people. And then, yeah, set off on the run and again got overtook by those 2 or 3 people. So I think I was pretty much last. So that was my first kind of dive into triathlon. But there was some, I don't know what it was, but I just thought, oh, I quite like this. And again, maybe it's my brain because I like to do lots of stuff, you know, lots of little things all the time. So I think maybe the fact that I can swim, bike and run, and I can do bits of training, maybe that's what kind of started the journey, because you're not just running or not, you know, not just looking at one of the disciplines at the time. So yeah, so that was probably the seed zone, and then the first race ticked. But I never ever thought I'd do.
When was that first race?
That was about, it's got to be 10, probably longer, 12 years ago, I think.
So it's 12 years to have gone from in your words, everything that could have gone wrong did go wrong, disaster first effort, through to what you've done now. So what were the key kind of points along the way where you went, I'm going to go the next step, I'm going to go the next step? Because very often when we talk to anyone who's achieved what they deem a successful goal in their life, they've very rarely gone from A to B. It's been like a step and then another step and another step. And suddenly they go, oh my God, I'm here. I'm where I dreamed of being 5, 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, and I think that to touch on that, I still don't think I've had that realization of, oh, I'm there, because it is such a gradual thing. 12 years is a long time. And I think that, you know, people who wake up tomorrow and go, I want to do an Ironman, and then they do one in a few months' time. I mean, I could never do that. And I think I'm self-aware enough to know that, I mean, let's be realistic. It hasn't been 12 years since I've gone, I'm going to do an Ironman, and then started plotting it out. I think the steps, as you say, were first learn to swim. Again, I was doing 750 meters, whatever the sprint one was, but I was knackered after it. Like, heart rate was through the roof. Well, in fact, I didn't even use heart rate then. I was just getting through it. And then I'd jump on the bike, and then, you know, all the stats on the bike, I thought I knew what I was doing, but again, I wasn't training with a power meter. I wasn't being really specific about the numbers on the bike. And running again, I was just trying not to die. So the steps, I guess, were number one, learn how to swim properly. But that didn't come for years. In fact, probably not until I met you. Probably, what's that, 3, 4?
I was thinking, because we've had quite a few conversations about this, and I do think the pandemic for a lot of people was a realignment of goals, but also a chance to, not selfish is the wrong word, but kind of go, I've been meaning to try and move this thing on in my life or work towards this and refocus on those goals, because I felt like your swimming's taken a massive leap forwards basically since the pandemic, where you've really got your teeth into it and gone, this is what I'm going to do. Yeah.
Well, I think, So looking at the Ironman specific, I mean, let's fast forward like 8 years, right? So I dabbled around in some triathlons, tried to learn how to swim a little bit better, you know, started training a little bit harder, fell out of it completely before the pandemic. I think everybody, like you said, during the pandemic took a bit of a backward step and thought, right, what's the most important stuff that's happening in my life? You know, what is the important stuff? And really for me, it was a massive realization that health, you know, I was quite a good runner when I was younger, you know, talking like 15, 16. And then to get to the point where, you know, I'd pull a hammy just, you know, running for a train, you know what I mean? That kind of thing. It was just embarrassing. And it really was a self-realization of, you've got to sort yourself out. So I think my swimming really did kick on from there. Because I think it was during that, really rubbish couple of years, it was like, okay, right, what are you going to do with your life? You know, you've really got to do something, leave some kind of legacy. And I think that was when I made the decision to do the Ironman. And even that wasn't from making a decision. You know, you still had quite a few steps to get to that point, even over the last couple of years of stepping up the triathlon distance, starting to swim further, starting to develop your skills, and also all the peripheral stuff that comes with doing it, of traveling abroad, understanding things like feeding, all of the things that when you get into the ultra end of endurance training, it's like, oh, I didn't realize that, because sometimes your races might be done in an hour. Yeah. I mean, certainly the short ones, I mean, going down to Dorney Lake was chuck your bike in the car. Okay. It's only an hour and a half. Well, for me, it was an hour and a half. Didn't think about nutrition or anything. Yeah, certainly. So, but coming back to the steps, I guess the first thing was deciding that I was going to do it. You know, you've really got to have the mindset. You know, for anybody who is listening and is thinking about doing an Ironman, it's 90% mindset. You know, getting up at 5 a.m. to go and do your sessions because you literally haven't got time in the day, and it's raining and it's windy and it's horrible, but you've got to get it done. You know, that in itself is a lesson. And that's probably the thing that I will take on, you know, moving forwards, that you can literally do anything. You've just got to set your mind to it. So, the interesting thing with what you've done is the documentation of it. Yeah. So I'm sure we'll touch on your Instagram channel later, but I do think it's really interesting the fact you have done that, because very often you might get to your finish line, your goal, and you look back and there's a few memories there, but for you to actually be able to scroll back and go,
oh, yeah, I remember that 6 months ago, or I remember this a year ago, I remember this 2 years ago, and look at where you're at and look at how far you've come. Was there a conscious thing there, or was that just kind of almost like with the isolating nature of doing that much training, was that almost like your digital training buddy to kind of keep track of everything?
Yeah, so the reason I started that Instagram thing is it was literally just a digital diary, I did a little video. I think my very first video was, I'm going to do an Ironman, and this is not for anybody else but me to record my journey so that I can look back and, see how well I've done. And actually thinking about it, I haven't really done that. I need to, and again, this is part of why we're doing this, I guess, as well, so I can actually reflect on what's happened, because I started that account once I'd made the decision to do it. I made myself accountable to the world by creating the account and putting a video out there saying I'm going to do it. And that was it, decision's made. I'm going to do it. So yeah, the Instagram account has been really, it's for me. I don't care if anybody sees it or not. It's just for me.
Yeah.
So yeah,
that's awesome. So let's talk about a couple of those milestones along the way from, say, the pandemic, of when things really kicked on, because there's that sense of, you said about the mindset, and also that self-belief that you can do it, because it's a huge task to do it. Like anyone in sport who understands sport looks at Ironman, whether they're an incredible endurance athlete or not, and goes, there's very few people that actually can do that. Like, it's really hard to do. And I think, were there points along the way over the last couple of years where you felt like the momentum was building, or you look back and think, oh, that was a moment where I felt like I really kicked forwards? Or were there events that you did where you kind of went, oh my God, this is going to be really hard, like realizing, say, you've done a half distance?
Yeah. Well, yeah. So I did a couple of half Ironmans. I mean, the goal was 2 years ago, I'm going to do an Ironman. Okay, cool. Let's break that down into phases. Okay, well, let's do a half Ironman. In fact, let's do an Olympic distance to see whether I can actually even do that without dying. So, maybe being a little bit dramatic there, but let's just see whether I can do it and how I feel afterwards. So started training, did the Olympic in St. Neots. That was when I cut my toe off. Not off completely, but must have stepped on some glass or something 5 seconds before the race started. Took my toe out of the water, and it was literally, you could see
a lot of stuff.
Yeah, it was horrible. But then just went for it and got through the race. And I think, again, that was part of the mindset, I guess. You just got to do it. So yeah, so I did the half, finished that with the bleeding toe, and thought, well, if I could do that, and fitness wise, I feel fine now, I could probably do a half. So I did the half. That actually got called off. I mean, it's the weather that day. Yeah. I can't remember whether you were going to come and watch.
No, we were away, but I remember the weather very similar to what we've had over the last few days.
It was unbelievable, and fair play to any. I had probably about 10, 15 people come up and watch me that day, even in that weather. And, a few people cancelled, and I don't blame them whatsoever. And I've got so much respect for, the people that came along to that race. So thank you so much for coming again. But yeah, so I did that. But I felt cheated almost, because the weather was so bad. They cut the bike in half. So that was frustrating, because, you train for so long to do a certain distance, and then they cut it in half, and it's like, oh.
How long ago was that?
That was about 6 months in, maybe a little bit longer, to the 2 years. So about 18 months ago. That was Grafman in Grafham. So yeah, they cut the bike. So I had to do another one that year to prove to myself I could actually do one. So I did Vitruvian Man up at Rutland. So that was another half distance. And actually they cut that one short by about 10k on the bike because of a gas leak or something. Anyway, so they were the two markers of like, okay, well, if I could do them and feel okay, and I could probably do a full one. And that's what happened, did them in, I think the Vitruvian was in September, kind of left it a month thinking about what I was going to do. And then that's when I decided on Copenhagen this year. So, and ended it in, I think, in November, and then started training properly from around then.
It does feel like it's been quite a long period of time from not just the journey up to the halves and those sorts of things, but coming out the back of that and going, right, all the cards on the table, we're in, let's do it, and everything. And I think, something I'm sure we'll get into.
It's felt a long time for you, is it?
Well, yeah.
Because that's it. It's felt literally like a lifetime for me.
But it's the peripheral stuff. So when I see you, it's every aspect of your life that's quite is. I think very often people will look at a sporting outcome and go, oh, that's a goal to work towards. But with stuff like this, I don't think many people appreciate the scale of the impact it has on the rest of your life. Yeah. So let's talk through that a little bit from, say, November, once you've entered, to go, what were the noticeable differences in terms of the impact on life?
The conversation started at the same time as me committing to doing an Ironman with Jem and my wife, Jem. This is the idea. This is what the training is probably going to look like. Are we in? And it's a we conversation. It can't just be I'm doing it, because it's a lot of strain on time, and on the relationship and everything. So I guess Jem was in from day one, from 2 years ago. So when the decision was made to do the full, where the training was going to ramp up again, she was already on the bus. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was the decision was kind of already made. It was just talking through it, making sure that we could actually, there was no major things coming up. We weren't going to move house. We ended up moving house. We weren't going to do anything ridiculous that was going to put extra stress on our time constraints. Jem, I mean, she's been absolutely brilliant. Without her support, it wouldn't have happened. It wouldn't happen. So yeah,
that's nice. That's really, really cool.
Yeah,
and I think again we're talking a lot of sport, especially like some of the real top level pros. Even them who have got all the support team around them will always talk about those key people.
Yeah,
that get them through it, because one of the things that a number of people I know have spoken to in the Ironman space are like, it's the training, like the actual event. And we'll come on to that in a minute, but the sheer volume of training and if you've got a Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, no kid and a wife to worry about, it's a lot of work. But when you do shifts and you've got a child and you're married, all of those aspects of it start to come into it. And that's assuming there's no injuries. That's assuming everything goes plain sailing. It's still insanely hard. So how did you navigate all of that?
How did we? I mean, having a really understanding partner is, and understanding people around you is number one. It's an uphill battle. If people are not on board, you're going to find it really difficult from day one. And luckily, the company I work for, obviously I'm in fitness, so they kind of understand the need. They understand that. And it is a need, I guess, to do an event like that and to take your training seriously. So that was good. And obviously working in the facilities themselves, that was a bit of a bonus. But how do you do it? I mean, I work really well with structure. I'm quite a structured person, quite organized. I'm my brain, because it's all over the place. You probably noticed in our chat already, I got off on tangents and, I was told earlier, actually, before I came on today, to just be concise. And I was like, yeah, no worries. I'll be concise, but my brain doesn't work like that. So again, apologies for the tangents. But I love structure. So the first thing I did was I bought a plan from Training Peaks from a guy called Phil Mosley, I think his name is. So it was the best thing I did. And actually now I'm on about my 4th training plan with him. But that training plan laid out exactly what I needed to do on the days I needed to do them, and the days off aligned with, you can choose your day off. So I made sure it was a Friday. So we have, do a little bit of social stuff on a Friday. But yeah, if the question is, how do you navigate training that amount of time for that long a period? In all honesty, you have to be a bit selfish. You have to, and that's what I mean. It's so tough for kind of everyone around you, I guess. Jem has to be really flexible. Work has to be flexible because, unfortunately I can't help cover this or do that, so I'm kind of out of the game a little bit in that area. Friends, I haven't been to any social stuff for months. So, and if we have done anything, socially wise, it's because it's been on my terms. So you've just got, when you're doing something that monumental, that's the word. It's all right. We can do that in the edit.
We'll do that in the edit.
Yeah. When you're doing something that big, you've just got to execute the plan and nothing can get in the way.
I'm sitting there, so where are we now? We're coming up to 100 shows, and I think we've had maybe 10 plus Olympic medalists sitting here having this conversation, and every single one of them.
That's ridiculous that I'm in that
the same conversation.
That is unbelievable.
But it's true in the sense of the fact I think there's a level of humility in people that are in sport, that understanding the cost. And I don't mean the financial cost. Obviously, there is the financial cost, but the cost to the people around you and the necessity to be selfish. And I think sometimes that's, whatever you want in life, if you're going to put a personal goal as number one, that will come at the cost to other things. And I think perhaps some people romanticize the idea of doing some of these things.
Yeah.
And then, just talk us through, for example, let's talk a normal working day of, say, an 8 or 9 hour shift, and then what you fit around that on, say, a normal week, mid-cycle.
Normal week, mid-cycle. So luckily my training during the week, and again, this is the thing I liked about this plan, is about an hour a day in the week. Thursdays were a double session, but it was optional. But it's not optional, really. In my head, it wasn't anyway, because it's such a big thing to do. I wanted to give myself every chance of actually going through the finish line. So during the week, it's about an hour a day. Fridays, you don't do anything. And then Saturday, Sundays is where it ramps up. So let's say Wednesday was a run. So, if I'm on a 9-5, if I've got stuff to do in the evening, I'm up at 6 and running. I'm doing my 10K. It was about 10 or 12K between that kind of distance. But then it could be anything from like a slow plod through to threshold runs or, either a zone, the lower zones or the higher zones. So it's something like that. So that would be, get up and do that. Or I'd get up, spend some time with James, my son, try and do some pre-school breakfast and getting him ready to go to school, that kind of, spend some actual time with him. And then, go to work, and literally as soon as I possibly could, I'd head up to the gym or go out for a run, get back for, 6, half 6. Again, try and spend a little bit of time with the family before it's bedtime. Eat, go to bed about 9, and then get up again at either 5 or 6 to do the training if it was an early morning one.
What about on the weekends?
So weekends were mad. If I'm honest, like the weekday stuff is all right because it's only an hour out of your life. Everyone's got an hour that they could spend in the gym or doing exercise. Everybody has, it's just you've got to prioritize, ring fence that time to do that hour. But weekends were crazy. So mid-session, mid-training block, you're probably looking at like 5 hours, well, say 3 to 5 hours on the bike on a Saturday, and then anything like a 20-minute through to an hour and a half run off the bike on a Saturday. So you can either have a nice chilled out morning, get up at 7, half 7, have some brekkie and chill, and then at some point you've got to go out for 5-6 hours. So having a family, you don't have the luxury to just get up and go whenever you want, and it just doesn't work like that, right? So for me personally, I was up at 5 on a Saturday a lot of the time, out on the bike for half 5, 6, back from training at like 11, quick shower, and then now I'm a family man. And that's the hardest bit, because then not only have you just done 6 hours training, you've now got to be, or 5 hours training, you've now got to be a dad, or a husband, or a friend. You've got to go and do stuff.
Do life.
Yeah. And that's probably the bit that's hardest. And I think, again, it's all about mindset. You made a decision to do the Ironman. So now you've just got to get on with it.
You talk about mindset there, and I think that's one of the really interesting things, observing your experience over the last 6 months. You've made the commitment, you've upped all the training, you've got a great team around you, the ball is starting to roll through the spring. And then we get into, I can't remember the specifics on the date, I'm sure you will, but we get into that build up towards the event and go like, I'm on the way now. And then, as we always said, it's never plain sailing. So just talk us through those few months running up to it.
Well, so just before I think it was about maybe 4 weeks, 6 weeks, something like that. The load of my training, the amount of time I was spending on my feet, especially on the run, I was doing like 2.5 hour runs every Sunday. I think the max I got up to was about 2 hours 45 for about 4 weekends in a row. And then disaster struck. Bang! My knee just woke up Monday morning, literally couldn't move. So that was a real worry, because I was like, well, I've spent all this time and energy. It's 2 years of my life, coming up to 2 years of my life. Am I actually going to be able to do this race now? And I panicked big time. So went and saw our physio at work, a chap called Brad, who was like, yeah, that could be quite bad.
Just what you wanted to hear.
Yeah, you need to stop running, really. But I know you're not going to listen to me. So the only advice I could do is, is get off your feet for a week, see what it does. And that was really stressful, actually. That was a real low, because again, it's 2 years. All of a sudden, that could be over now, because I was following my training plan to the T. So that was difficult to deal with. But then again, like, it's just mindset, right? You have to. I was so hell bent on doing my training. Taking that week off was killing me.
I remember.
Yeah. It was so bad, and the knee didn't really get much better really for about 2 weeks. I started to try and do a little bit on the bike after a few days. That was a bad idea, 'cause it still hurt. Then I started getting back into my running after a couple of weeks, and it was okay. But the first couple of K would just kill me really bad. So there, I really did think for a couple of weeks there that I actually looked at cancelling as well.
Well, we had that conversation, and you talked about kind of the time window and all those sorts of things, and it was see how it goes. And obviously, I guess the blessing of doing an activity that includes swimming is you can do some activity by taking the weight off it, but equally, it's like that's not what I need, not all of what I need to be doing.
Yeah, I mean, I could swim by that point. I wasn't really too fussed about it. The difference that 5 minutes, the difference between like swimming at 2 minutes per 100 or 1:55 per 100 isn't that different in the grand scheme of things in an Ironman, right? So I wasn't too fussed about that. And my running is my least favourite and least able sport to do. So that was the one I really needed to work on, which is why I think I was taking these training sessions so seriously and trying to get as much of it done and just try and nail those 100%. In training piece, you get green blocks basically. Every time you do a session perfectly, you get a green block. So I was chasing these green blocks for 2 years, and I was so scared that I was seeing red blocks, not doing it at all. And that really did kind of throw me off. I can't remember the question. But.
No, I guess really then transitioning out of that in the run up, because I think.
Oh yeah, the run up to the race.
You reach a point, and I'm, again, spoke to a lot of different athletes, but you have the good and the bad that comes with any journey of sport, whether it's, a year, 2 years, 4 years, 10 years. But you get to a point where it's like, right, it's happening now. Like we're a week out, we're 2 weeks out, we start packing suitcases, we start getting kit ready.
I see what you're doing here, Kev. You're moving the conversation on to the next phase. Okay, very good. It's like you've done this before.
It is like I've done this before.
Nearly 100 of them.
But I almost feel like knowing how much we love to have a conversation, we'll be 2 hours in and it'll be like we haven't got to the start line.
Yeah, it'll be dark and Jen will be coming home going, can I sit down on the sofa now? Yeah. So, okay, right. So then we're now, the knee's got a bit better. I'm starting to train a bit harder. Okay, I'm not going to cancel. I'm going. And I think that there was a really honest conversation with Jen. Am I doing this or am I not? Because if I'm not, I'm going to have to do all the training again next, and do another race next year. There wasn't really many options for this year that I could really consider. Barcelona is an option. But that was about the only one that I thought of would give you enough time to heal and then be able to do it. So anyway, that quickly became a non-option. So it's like, well, I've got to do it. I've got to turn up, and I've just got to see how we get on. So yeah, a couple of weeks before, training had gone quite well, considering a knee. And again, I was really protecting my knee, and looking back, maybe I was being too protective over it,
but you got to the start line.
And I got to the finish line, more importantly. So if I hadn't done that, even during the race as well, I was protecting it a little bit. I think 2 weeks before, it was like, okay, right, well, I'm definitely going. It's too late to cancel now. Flights are all done. It's happening. It's definitely happening. Okay, I'm going to the start line. And that was exciting, really. It was good, yeah. So sorry, yeah, training went well. The next bit was, I guess, packing everything up and making sure I had everything there. One nightmare. I mean, I've got an estate car, and it wasn't until the morning of going to the airport I realised that I couldn't fit my bike box in the car. So
now, ladies and gents, you would think in all in 2 years of preparation, one thing you might check is that your luggage fits in the car.
Yeah. Well, so every other race or anything I'd done, I'd basically gone either on my own or without the whole family, or maybe they'd gone separately, or actually a lot of the time I'd actually just lay my bike on its side in the back of the car. My son in his little chair would have the handlebar like sticking quite close to his little face. But yeah, this time obviously I was taking it on an aeroplane, so you pack it up into a bike box. So yeah, that was a bit stressful. But I mean, I've got to give a massive shout out to the people I did it with. I actually managed to recruit during this 2-year phase 4 people three others. There was 4 of us that did it all together. So 3 other people to do the race, and luckily one of them, chap called Stephen, Run Wells coming soon. He basically drove up on the morning of the race, put my bike in his car, and we were getting on the same flight and stuff. But what a good lad! Saved the day there. So yeah, so packed up the bike, got to the airport. This is the first flight that James had got on as well. And the first flight that me and Jem had been on for years.
So how old's your son?
He's 4.
So the first flight you ever go on is in probably lead up to one of the biggest sporting occasions.
Oh, the biggest thing I'll ever do in my life. The most stressful occasion ever. But in a way it was good because I don't really I think it's claustrophobia. I don't consciously think about this until I'm in a position where I am petrified and I'm like, oh, what's happening? Oh yeah, I'm in a really small space. And that happened on a flight back from Mallorca years ago. And then since then, I've really struggled with getting on a plane. But anyway, I think it was a good thing because both my wife and I had to pretend that everything was cool. To James, we wanted to make this a really good experience. So actually, it kind of helped in a way, actually getting there. Being there and him being tired and, the whole, stress. I don't want to say stress, but the whole...
Dealing with a child abroad, when they're tired, you haven't got your house to go back to. You haven't got haven't got the support bubble and all those things, and the normal routines, and familiar food and sleep patterns, and just being in a different country.
And everything's just, stressful, I guess is the right word. So I would... here's a top tip. If you're ever going to do an Ironman, don't take your family. I mean that in the nicest way possible. And I think that Gemma would back me on that because you're not going together. You're basically doing 2 completely separate trips, right? I'm going to race, so I'm in the zone, thinking, eat, sleeping, drinking triathlon and the race day specifically. She's gone to check out a new city and there is also a race going on that she's going to... And actually, she followed me around all day. It was amazing, the amount of support that she gave me on the day. But yeah, they're just 2 different things. And I think if you can try and, I would suggest just go on your own or go with another person who's doing the race because you're on the same vibe. Yeah. Like my vibe being a really stressy, stressed out, focused, anxious vibe.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you got off the plane. We've avoided any massive meltdowns. We've blagged our way through it. We've somehow got the bike to the airport as well, which is a result.
Just about, yeah.
So you got off the plane. Now, we all have that experience. You get on holiday, the door opens and you're like, I'm here. From that opening and going, I'm now here, what was that kind of experience like from there up to the start line?
It wasn't really like an open the plane door, I'm here. It was more, okay, get to the Airbnb, get in, get the shopping, sort yourself out. Right. The next day, let's go to the Ironman village. And it wasn't until I remember going down like the path to the Ironman village, and the entrance to it is one of these big like blow up things with the Ironman dot, the M dot. And that was when it got real. Because it was like, I'm here now.
Yeah.
So that was the thing. And I got a photo of it, and I look back at it now and I think, what a rubbish photo. But I think I took it because it was so momentous. It was like, oh. So that was the realization that, this is happening now. And then, you're going through the village and, you're just trying to soak up as much atmosphere as possible. But again, in my head, I was so focused on what I had to do. I had to go and register. So I'd go and register and I'd get that done and I'd tick that off in my brain. So I'm still in this real regimented, structured, organized mode, actually all the way through the whole trip. And it wasn't again until probably the Monday after the race, that I started to just unwind a bit. So so it was interesting.
What was it like the night before? Because we have a lot of people who talk about the night before, the big exam, the main event, the test, whatever it is, like the thing that you've spent all that time preparing for. And one of the things you talked about already there is like ticking things off in your routine.
Yeah.
But one of the biggest things that you hear from athletes talking is when their head goes on the pillow the night before.
Yeah.
I've done everything I can. It's now, this is it.
Yeah, well, because I'd had that conversation about I'd done everything I could weeks before. But basically when I did the knee, it was like, you're not really going to make many gains in terms of fitness. You've just got to get to the start line now. So just manage your knee, get to the start line. So that was in my head already, really. The night before, so that would have been the Saturday night. So really the Friday night was important because I wanted to get a good night's kick. And I did pretty much. I think I slept like 8 hours or something, which is good, right? The night before, it's awful. I think I had about I think I looked earlier, about 5.5 hours sleep, 6 hours sleep maybe. And again, for me, I'm not a very good, I have to have my 8 hours basically, 10 if I can get it. Again, having a child, that hasn't happened for 4 or 5 years.
So you woke up on race day having had 8 hours sleep?
No. Having about 5.5, 6 hours.
Okay. Yeah.
I woke up on the Saturday having had quite a bit of sleep.
And thought, okay, this is good.
I thought, yeah, exactly. But then they always say that, and I knew that would be the case. It was important to get, because no one ever, like you just said, no one ever gets a good night's sleep the night before, right? And I've done loads of races, and again, that's probably another top tip I'd give people thinking about doing an Ironman. Do loads of races. Whatever it is, just enter loads of stuff, because you get used to dealing with those nerves. Like I've done 10Ks, 5Ks, sprint triathlons, Olympic triathlons. I've done probably, 10, 15 races or something, in the last couple of years, just to get used to that feeling of the night before. So I'm comfortable with that. Like I know I'm not going to be very good, and it's just part of the ride. Yeah. So the night before, not much sleep, wake up in the morning.
Also breakfast.
Race morning.
Yeah.
Don't do anything different to what you've been doing in training.
Top tip there.
Okay, another top tip. Maybe, can we have like a little ding?
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah. Don't do anything different. So I had porridge, funky porridge as well, like Danish porridge. It was pretty nice, but I don't know what they do to those oats.
Just a bit different.
Yeah, just a little bit Danish.
We like that.
Yeah, it was nice though. So that and a coffee.
What times wake up on race day? Bearing in mind the race is the entire day.
So I think I set my alarm for 5 minutes past 4. Because
because
I was going to get up at 4, and again I thought, well, if I give myself 5 minutes, I feel like I've had a bit of a lay-in. At least, genuinely, I thought.
So we talked about the cost to your life there. That's not normal.
Mindset. Well, it's just mindset, isn't it? Like, it's a little win for me. It's like I didn't get up at 4, I got up at 5 past. So
okay, so you got up at 5 past 4 after your lay-in. You've had your Danish porridge, and your coffee.
Danish porridge and coffee. I filled up my water bottles. There's so many. I mean, again, I won't go into it all now. You can Google like what you should do with your bags and stuff. But there's so many bits you need to think about, like filling your water bottles, taking your nutrition, taking anything else that you want to last minute, because all your bike and bags are already racked up. And luckily, again, I'd read a lot of stuff about having race brain. So I'd written, and again, I'm a super organized kind of person. So I'd written a list of literally everything I need to do. And again, Gemma, bless her, she literally wrote instructions of exactly how to make porridge on the morning. So I didn't have to think. I could just look at this bit of paper, make the porridge and go. And that was a massive help, because I don't know why, but you just forget to do everything. So I've made porridge a million times, right? So yeah, had my porridge, had my coffee. Viewers might want to, or listeners might want to, both viewers and listeners might want to turn this bit down, but you have to clear out your system.
Yep. You don't want to be running and needing to go to the loo that many times along the way.
Exactly that. Yeah, I was trying to avoid using the loo, but basically, like for anybody who's training and stuff, you'll know, right? You need to have a poo before you go out for 3-4 hours, right? Because it can ruin your session. So, and that's a worry for a few of my friends. That's a big deal. And luckily, I'm pretty good at that. So I have my coffee.
All this race practice.
Yeah, well, again, but it was, right?
Indeed.
So you do have to kind of practice, silly, right? Silly little things. So I don't know how many thousands of listeners.
Hundreds of thousands of people are listening.
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah.
Comments on the little poo emoji.
Yeah, I had a great poo the morning of the race.
There it is. That's the soundbite. That was what I was trying to hook you out of.
But yeah, so I got my stuff and made my way to the train station. And again, I've made a little video. We had our WhatsApp group with all 4 of us in it. And that, again, is a massive thing, by the way. Again, like, if you can recruit others into your race and do a little WhatsApp or some kind of little support group, that made such a big difference as well. Like, they're all going through it at the same time. So, top tip, ding, don't go with your family, go with somebody else who's doing the race. You'll be sharing the whole experience. You'll be able to calm each other's nerves because you're both doing, thinking and feeling the same things. So on the way to the train station, I made this little video and actually that was the very first, I'm racing. It's time to actually race. It's time to, the whole 2 years, it leads up to this morning. And I made a little video, just come on, boys, now it's time, let's do this, and sent it off. And yeah, that was it. And then, I made my way to the metro. And broke down. I
was about to say, and even so you've gone through the 2 years, all these things. Yeah. You've overcome the knee injury, you've got there, you've managed to get your sleep, you've had your poo, which was fantastic.
Yeah, it was a great one as well.
You get to the train station and then it's going, you thought you were ready to go, but apparently not.
And these things are sent to test us, right? And again, I guess throughout the whole thing, there's little bits, I had I had to buy 4 new tyres leading up to the race because I just kept getting punctures, right? And these things are sent to test us, right? So yeah, on the day of the race, went down to the metro, jumped on. It went about 1 or 2 stops, and the doors closed, and we sat there for about 5 minutes. Bearing in mind, this is probably 5:30, 6:15 or something in the morning. And you've got your swim warm-up time to get to. So you have to get to the venue, check in, do whatever you need to do, and then be ready to race. They're not going to wait for you if you're stuck on a train. So yeah, got about 2 stops and the doors closed. And then, finally, 5 minutes later, we started moving. Anyway, got to the next thing. The doors didn't close, but we sat there for probably about 5 or 6 minutes again. And again, I'm looking at my watch. I'm thinking, oh God, like, what am I going to do? Do I sit here and wait, or do I take it into my own hands and just make another way there? So that's what I did. And I think I've given you this in some of the things we talked about earlier. This is unbelievable. I don't know how this happened, but the universe was shining down on me. So anyway, I get out of the metro, I go up to the street, I'm getting my phone out, getting Google Maps open, trying to work out where I'm going. And I cannot believe it. One of the 4 that I talked about is in a group, cycles past on an e-bike. I had to tell you, I said, Cookie! He stopped, looked at me, I looked at him. Yeah! What are you doing here? He turned around and said, I'm lost, I don't know, what are you doing here? I said, my metro's broken down. So I said, give me a backie. And he was like, yeah, boy!
The vision, when you told me this, the vision of you going through before 6 o'clock in the morning, having a backie like you're on the way to school.
Literally having a backie.
And bearing in mind the risk of doing that on the day where one thing you don't want to turn up to the start there is, I rolled my ankle, how'd you do that? Or I was getting a backie.
Exactly. No, it was ridiculous. Again, I don't know how that happened, but he was lost. I was broken down. We're in the middle of Denmark, middle of Copenhagen. Yeah, got a backie to the start line. And he parked up the bike and we started walking down to the thing. But again, like another thing happened as well. So we're in the bike lane in Copenhagen. It's great for cycling. But we were just walking down this big path, it looked like. But we didn't realise this was the bike lane. Anyway, a couple of guys behind us started shouting and pretty aggressively in Danish. My Danish isn't very good, but I could tell they weren't happy. No. They weren't complimenting my glutes or anything like that, no. And as they went past, like they were looking back, like really giving us some stick. Anyway, they hit the deck, like the one in front crashed, and the guy who's still giving us some jit smashed into him. So now, and they're obviously like going to the race because they're on these lovely triathlon bikes. But I couldn't help myself from laughing my head off. I know. But I just thought it was, I don't know why my brain does that, but when I'm in a particularly stressful situation, I tend to find it amusing. So then they hit the deck, they're still shouting at us. I'm still laughing and helping them off the floor, asking if they're all right. Anyway, so yeah, that was interesting as well. So we finally get to the start, to the village, and then it was race time.
So the last, I don't know, not having been on the start line before, 60 seconds, do they give you like a shout out saying kind of come to the line or anything like that? Do you get the point of going, this is it? Like, spoke to a few people myself where I've jumped out of the plane and you get to the point of no return. Yeah. Was there that moment where you suddenly went,
well, they start to gather everybody up. So you do your little practice swim, which is about, I think it's about 10, no, they open it up about maybe even 20 minutes before the start line anyway.
Is it a water start or were you on pontoon? Or was it a run into the water?
So it's a run into the water, and that's one thing they've actually changed, which I think is great. The first triathlon I ever did 12 years ago, it was just a mass start, just in the water. And I've done a few, and again, the one in St. Neots where I cut my toe off, mass start. But since COVID, they now set you off in waves. I don't really understand the thinking behind it. I think at the time it was so that you're not in close proximity to other people's breath and stuff. But they've stuck with that now. So there aren't any mass starts, which I think is, for people who are not very confident swimmers, I think that's great. So yeah, they kind of, you do your little practice swim next to the start line just to get acclimatized to the water. And you then funnel in through these like
pontoony gates.
Yeah. And yeah, I basically put myself right in front of the group because I was like, right, we've got to take this race by the cojones. The cojones?
Yeah.
Yeah. Spanish isn't very good. And yeah, that was when you can't turn around because there's 1,000 people behind you. So that is where it's like, you're in it now. Like, you're definitely doing it now. But again, I'd done loads of races by this point, so I was like, okay, cool. I know what this feeling's like. You know, the adrenaline starts to go.
Yeah.
You know, you just have to try and stay as cool and calm, and you kind of go in a meditative kind of state almost. So I did anyway. And then so start line, and then you get this beep, and they let waves of I think about 6 people off at a time. So I was wearing a green hat. I was one of the first green hats to go. And beep, off I went. Sauntered into the water, thinking this is going to be a long day. Press start on the Garmin, and off I went.
Do you know, I mean, flippantly there about it being a long day, but that's been one of the interesting reflections for me and a lot of people that we work with is how many people were tracking what you were doing.
Oh, and looking at my WhatsApp afterwards, unbelievable.
But that's when it brings home the enormity of how, as an athlete, I'm looking at going, I don't know if I could exercise for that long. So like, you're waking up and you're going, I started this swim. And then, you've had a shower and you've had breakfast and you've had a little chat and you look at the notification, oh, he's now finished his swim. I've driven 2 hours across the country back up to Hertfordshire because we stayed with my parents. And then you then go, oh, okay, here's another checkpoint. And then you have lunch and then you go to the gym in the afternoon and you're sitting down to Sunday dinner.
Yeah.
And they're going, and they're still going.
Still moving.
And that was a really interesting point of it. But obviously the swim, relatively time-wise, is a smaller chunk than the other 2 disciplines. So did you get through the swim and kind of go, yes, it's going to be a long day, but first box ticked? Yeah,
the swim, again, mindset, it's just a warm-up for the rest of the day. So I didn't want to push too hard. I didn't want to, get into any fights or, which is easily done when there's 2,000 other people out there. Not fights per se, but I didn't want to kind of,
don't want to waste energy unnecessarily.
Exactly, right? So, you just want to get through it as smooth as possible. So, which I did. And actually, I did a cracking time.
You did?
Yeah, thank you. And when you said I did a good time, that did mean a lot, mate, because,
I think it's really interesting when we were watching it because, Jen as well, we were both sitting tracking it. And when you came through and it went, what? Well, sub 150 pace. And we were like, bearing in mind we'd watched obviously the last few weeks leading up to it with the injury and all of that sort of stuff. It's like, has he got a bit excited or anything like that? But actually reflecting on it, and you just went, it was just a really good swim.
Yeah, my heart rate stayed really low.
That's great.
Yeah, it was just really good. I think again, a top tip on that, ding, just get onto, be comfortable swimming with other people around you. So enter loads of races, swim on people's feet. You have to go through those things of getting punched. I've been punched on the back of the head in my last race, inhaled a load of water and spent probably 200 meters, about 200 meters coughing every time I was breathing out under the water. And I'd take a big breath and then just be like, trying to literally get the water out of my lungs, but because I'd done all that, I wasn't too fussed about, anything happening in the actual, on the big day. So I got through, sat on people's feet, got knocked about a little bit, but that was only because that was probably due to me overtaking, maybe in the wrong way. I don't know, but we're all aiming for the same buoy. So
talk about that bit coming out, because we always see the transitions when you're watching them on TV and stuff like that. Because I think that's, again, it's, as I said, it's relative time. It's not a third of it, but mentally just coming up that ramp and going, swim done. Well, what was that bit like?
Well, swim. So again, mindset, right? I didn't really, reflecting on it now, I probably should have been like, oh, that was cool, just on the swim part of the Ironman. But no, it's not. It's like, right, stop. What's next? Okay, go to that bit. Do this. Grab my bag. That's what it felt like. It was more just a process.
Yeah. And
I think that, again, if you can just stick to the process, you can do anything. So yeah, I started walking up the ramp, saw the photographer, gave him a cheeky little thing, obviously. It was just right. Okay, cool. Where's my bag? That was the first thing I thought. Where's my bag? And actually the last, so you turn on the last buoy, for me, it was about another 100 meters or something, maybe 200 meters. But that was the time I was like, okay, what do I have to do now? What is the next step? And you kind of fill your brain with what you're going to do before you get out of the water. So getting out of the water is more like, okay, right, make sure stop my Garmin, make sure you find your bag, but take it easy. Don't let your heart rate spike because you're just excited to get finished. And for me, I did a full change from the swim to bike. A lot of people, they'll wear their tri-suit under their wetsuit. But for me, again, in training, don't do anything different that you've done in training. So did a full change for the sake of, I think both transitions actually were 10 minutes each, which sounds like a long time if you're a pro or if you're racing hard. I was not competing. I was completing, right? I just wanted to get this done.
Oh, I like that. I love that.
Yeah. So, yeah, jumped into the tent, did a full change, and then just sauntered out.
Yeah.
Just wandered round to my bike, really casual, really relaxed. And then, but again, because it's a long day, right? So yeah, that was it. That was the swim section done. And luckily, actually, so one of the nice things about, I was just talking to Steph about this earlier. She's doing Barcelona, Nutty Foodie Fitness, to give her a follow. She was talking about getting to the registration bit to register early to get to get registered and to get a number. And I don't know whether it's true with all triathlon, with all Ironman races. The earlier you get there, the lower number you have, which means the closer your bike is to the end of transition. So I was saying she's going to go and get, the second the registration opens, she's going to go and get a number. And luckily for me and Steve, we registered quite early on a Friday, so we were still quite close to the front. So that was a really good thing. So again, top tip, if you can get there early to register, get there early, get a low number and be closer to the end of transition. Basically, so you're not just having to push your bike.
I was about to say, not appreciating the scale of it. Imagine a Tesco's car park filled with bikes.
Yeah.
And
people kind of, just
rushing around and on bikes.
Yeah.
And some people stumbling and falling and everything that comes with a transition area.
Yeah. But again, enter loads of races, get used to all that stuff happening so that you're nice and chilled by the time you come to your race. So that was it. So that was the bike done. Jumps on the bike. Sorry, the swim done. Yeah, jumped on the bike.
What was your total swim time, just to give some context?
I think it was like an hour and 7, hour and 8 maybe.
So an exercise that's already gone on for an hour.
Yeah, but again, doing the training, an hour. What's an hour? Like an hour's nothing. Literally, I do that before breakfast. Yeah. I was doing that before breakfast, so it wasn't a biggie. Which sounds like, actually thinking about that now, had I said to Phil 3 years ago, like, you're going to do an hour and 10 swim
at a good pace,
at that pace, if I'd have said that 3 years ago, or if I'd have done an hour's exercise, that would have been, that's enough of a biggie. So yeah, anyway, jumped on the bike and then got going on the bike. Yeah.
So you're heading away, like, again, not being an Ironman expert, like, just talk us through the concept for the bike, because obviously you have like your loops and the aspects of the course and the fact that you pass people in different aspects of where they are in their race, accidents, punctures. Yeah. The bike is obviously a completely different beast to the swim. Yeah,
it really is. And it's, but it's still the same. You manage it the same way. Like, you want to keep your heart rate low. You don't want to burn your matches. You don't want to push too hard on the bike. So that was always the mantra. Just take it steady. Which I did. But again, I did quite a good bike time as well. So it's almost like I trained really hard for this.
It's almost like you were prepared.
It was almost like I'm prepared, Kev. Yeah. The bike was cool. The bike was fun. It's just a big picnic, basically. You're just trying to eat as much as you can. It genuinely
sounds like my kind of dream.
Yeah, it was good. And I'd actually, so on the morning of the race, I made 2 peanut butter sandwiches, like rolls, and just squashed them into like pancake flat kind of things and put them in the swim to bike bag, like in the first transition bag. So I'd grab them, put them in my pocket on the bike. And I just knew that once I got to the halfway point, I had like a little treat, so again, it's a mindset thing. You're tricking yourself into thinking, something to look forward to. And I cracked these sandwiches open at like 100k. Oh, it was amazing, because you get taste fatigue, taste fatigue is a thing. I was eating so many gels, and all my nutrition was sweet because it's carbs and it's sugar, and it's the quickest way to get that energy into your system, right? So having this salty, peanut buttery bread roll, it was delish. Yeah, it
Was
really
there
helped.
any incidents on the bike, or was it plain sailing?
No, the bike was not plain sailing for a lot of people. So it rained. There was a storm the night before, and apparently that kind of like brings up all the flint and turns the stones on the road. So there were hundreds of people that were pushing their bikes on the road, changing punctures, having to deal with issues. So I got 140k in, feeling so smug, and just looking at my average pace, thinking, like, this is brilliant. And then 140k, and then my front wheel just goes flat, and I was so gutted. So 140k, I had to just chuckle to myself while I'm taking 20 minutes to repair this puncture, which should have taken 5 minutes, not even. But I guess your brain goes a little bit crazy, doesn't it?
Yeah.
When or just doesn't work properly when you're in race mode. So yeah, it took me 20 minutes to fix the puncture, which I don't know. In hindsight, it gave me a 20-minute rest. So maybe the universe was giving me that rest, knowing that I had to do a marathon next.
And we should emphasise this, having never done a marathon before.
No, never done that.
Because I did my first one last year, and I think I only discovered that a couple of weeks before you went.
Yeah.
I was like, so what have you done just as a stand-up marathon? You went, I've never done one. I was like, your first time you're ever doing a marathon is after you've done a 4K swim and 108K on bike.
Yeah. It's weird though, isn't it? Because with a marathon, like it takes a lot out of you. It's a big undertaking in itself. So you would never really do a marathon in your training because it would just batter you. It would just kill you for a week. So you would miss all your other sessions. The recovery on it is just not worth the fitness gains. And,
You talk about the psychology. I think for me, it was knowing the place I was in for the last kind of 4 to 6 miles. Going, I don't know how far into a marathon that's coming if you've already kind of expended that much physical and mental energy. But like you said, getting out of the swim, mentally going, that's my warm-up done.
Yeah.
Like, that's not even a part of the race. And then getting through the first 140k to go, well, this feels all right on the bike. Like, that must be, there's a level of confidence there going, I haven't expended too much energy yet.
Yeah, and confidence is a good word. I did feel really confident throughout the whole thing because I knew that I put in those efforts. I'd been chasing those green blocks in my training for 2 years. I didn't wing it, and that was always the mindset. You can't skimp on this. And I think a lot of stuff in my life, I have tried to cut corners, or I've tried to take the easy route, right? I think that's another thing that I and certainly I think a lot of people who do these things take away, that, the discipline to do things. And actually sitting here, having done an Ironman, the benefit you get from doing stuff properly. So yeah, I felt so confident because I've done it properly for one of the first times in my life. Seriously. Again, we'll maybe cover Phil's life story, the younger years.
That can be volume 2.
Yeah. If leave a comment below if you want to hear part 2. But yeah, so yeah, I did feel really confident. And then changed the tire, carried on, and then it was run time, which again went really, really well. So the transition, again, I did a full change again. Why not? For the sake of an extra few minutes.
Fresh clothes,
fresh
everything
socks,
put on properly. Yeah,
it took a couple of minutes of just actually sitting there and going, while you're getting changed and you're looking at your heart rate, trying to bring it back down. Because, I've been in like about 140 beats per minute for 6 hours, but, actually 7 and a bit hours, including the swim. So 130 to 140 beats a minute. So your body's like, it's hard work, isn't it? So I thought, if I just try and get my heart rate to drop a little bit here, give it a little bit of a rest before I go and run a marathon. Yeah. So 10 minutes on the second transition, put my stuff on, didn't bank on there not being water actually in the transition, which was frustrating. It was so hot. I think they just ran out. was about 24, 25 degrees by the time I got on the run. And I knew about it. So I got out of the transition, started running with a bowl full of powder, no liquid in there, and had to run a couple of K to the first aid station to then be able to fill up my water bottle. So that put me on the back foot from the beginning. So that threw me off a little bit. Yeah. And then it was just get your head down and crack on now.
Did you see, obviously with the running, with swimming, you don't tend to go past many people in terms of supporters, and obviously on the bike, you're going past them at a decent speed. So,
do you know what? Actually, I forgot to mention. So I did go past the supporter on the swim. Weirdly, Gemma tells me the story afterwards, and she's got the video. Because I was, again, from your help and Jen's help as well, actually, in the swim, I absolutely smashed the swim. So I swam through a couple of groups, and each group has a different coloured hat. So I was the only green hat in the middle, like a sea of, I think it was pink hats or blue hats. And so Gemma is like with my son going, oh, look, Daddy's wearing a green hat. Oh, there's a green hat coming now. Hang on, that's Daddy. So she managed to pick me out of like 2,000 people and got a picture of me in the swim. So yeah, that was unbelievable.
What about on the bike? Did you do any loops past them?
Yeah, so, oh man, like, I can't believe how good. So my dad actually came over, dad and stepmom, I guess she is officially, Ali. So yeah, they came over, they got a train, because I think he's got claustrophobia as well. Maybe that's where I got it from. Is claustrophobia hereditary?
I don't know. Something we can look at. If anyone know, comment below.
Yeah, let me know. So he got a train, and actually it's quite nice. They did like a whole European tour, you know. They've got their own story and journey, you know, experience that they had.
Volume 3.
They had a nightmare. Well, basically they had a nightmare. Their train broke down. They came late. They didn't even know whether, oh man, anyway. But anyway, on the race day itself, they didn't come to watch me at the beginning of the swim, and I don't blame them because it was super early start. And again, I'm not a very nice person to be around at the beginning.
As most people aren't. When they're in race mode, don't talk to me in the last hour.
Just don't talk to me. Like I'm not horrible, but I'm not going to talk to you, and I'm thinking about my own stuff. So just leave me alone, which they did, which was great. And then on the way out, they were there. They were on the bridge as you come out of the bike. So that was amazing to see my son going, go Daddy, like amazing, right? I mean, being a dad is amazing, but then having your son like looking so happy and being, cheering and, you know, being an inspiration to him was just amazing. So, saw them kind of in a couple of places. They then jumped on a train to the middle of nowhere, on the bike. And I passed them on the second loop, I think. So that was, again, amazing just to see them there. And then on the run, they were everywhere. It was, I don't understand how they got to all these places so quickly. It was awesome, you know. So I said earlier, don't bring your family to a race, but when they are there,
they can come, but they turn up once you dive into the water.
Once I've started, then you're allowed to come, yeah. But the support was incredible. And actually, this is another kind of, you know, really nice thing. The support in an Ironman race, it is awesome. Even if there's only, in any race, if you've got someone going, come on, keep going, it's amazing. Like, you don't know me, I don't know you, and yet you're expending energy and encouraging me to go forward. Like, it's just the connection with humans in that kind of way. It's just so amazing. And especially at Ironman races as well, because there's these big races and because they are, you know, held in quite high esteem, I guess. I think a lot of people, they really do want you to do well. And you have your name on your race number. So I'm getting calls from, go on, Phil. Like, come on, Phil, you can do it, Phil. Like, are you all right, Phil? There was one point on the run where I was not all right. But hearing these people kind of support and cheer you on was amazing. But yeah, having your family there as well was, you know, and having their support was awesome.
So you're in the middle of a 25 degrees marathon, which, I mean, I went through mine and it was about 15, 16 when we got to the finish line. And I was like, that was too hot. So, yeah, and now I hear that and I'm like, how the hell, after doing all of the swimming and the biking, do you do it? So you've obviously got through that first bit. You found your water.
Yeah.
You've got into the rhythm of it to a point. And was it a loop? Was it a long circuit? Like, how did it work for the run?
It was 4 10K, well, 10 and a bit Ks, 10 and a half Ks, I think it was.
Yeah.
It's a 42K race, right? So whatever that divided by 4 is, I guess. So 4 loops, out and back, out and back, out and back. You pick up a band. So the significance of that was that I was just, again, mindset stuff. I was just going to get my next band. Wasn't really thinking about anything else but getting that band. And you start to see other people who've got the band up from you, and you're like, oh, how have you done that so quickly? Like, you're a whole 10K ahead of me. No wonder I'm overtaking you. Like, do you know what I mean? Or, you know, people would overtake you and they've only got one of their bands.
And you're like, you wait.
And you go, yeah. Oh, I remember those times. A couple of hours back, I was like you once upon a time. And yeah, so the run was out and back. The aid stations are epic. Like, there was this group of girls, teenage girls, like, you know, but they were so enthusiastic and awesome. I will never forget. Like, they were making, you know, when they put their hands up, like, make a little kind of
things for you to run through.
They were doing that. They were going, ooh, like a little Mexican wave when you go past, spraying you with a hose, chucking water at you, offering you drinks. Like, it was needed because it was a sufferfest. Like, you could see people, you know, really suffering out there. But yeah, it was awesome. The aid stations were amazing. Yeah, really, really good. The heat was just ridiculous. And yeah, I guess, so for me, so the first half of the run, because I've been training, and again, I was just basically executing what I was doing, training, I got halfway through the run and realised I'd forgotten to eat, because in my training, I'd not been taking gels or eating on the run, and I've been feeling fine and actually running really well. So I thought, I'll just do that on race day then. Big mistake. I'd never ran a marathon after doing 108K on the bike after doing the swim. So 21K came and then bam!
Talk about hitting the wall.
Yeah, and I think that is the best phrase, because everything was just, I actually was closing my eyes and I gave myself a little snack, a little present for in the transition bag. I put a little bag of midi cheddars in my running shoes. So I put those in my pocket, and then I knew that I had those. So I was like, oh yeah, I need to eat. So my mouth was so dry by this point. So I was stuffing like mini cheddars that are crumbling, and like I was having my eyes closed, walking down the road, like, and that's when I heard, "Are you okay, Phil?" And I was like, oh. So yeah, and it took me about 20 minutes or so to recover. And again, for those of you who are tracking me, you probably saw like my kilometers. It was like I started off at ridiculous, like 5.5 minute kilometers for the first K. I think to go and get the water. Then it was like 6.5, then 7, then 7.5, and then it was like 9.5. And that's when it was like, yeah, this is bad.
But watching you go through that, I think once you get to a point as a tracker, if you like, was going, just show me that he's got to the next gate. And then at the next one, just show me that he's got to the next gate. You almost let go of the pacing and just going, just get to the next gate. Yeah. Because the thing is, like, mentally, people have said to me, you do a half marathon. If you can complete a half, even if you have to walk the last bit, you will finish a marathon. And it's like, to get past halfway and got out of that like little lull in the middle, get yourself back on it if you like. But also, I think mentally going, I'm halfway through the run, and total kilometers wise, I'm so far into this now. You've got that kind of, I guess, psychological momentum.
Well, again, Steph asked me this earlier, like, there was no chance I was not going to do this. So yeah, I would have crawled to the next half marathon. It was just, it's just so powerful, I guess, when you're in that race, I'm putting myself back where I was, like what got me to keep on going. And it was more like, I think, without getting too like emotional with it, like I just had to. I just had to do it. So yeah, taking that dip, yeah.
Well, let's talk about the bands, because you said about getting those bands on the loop.
Yeah.
What happened when you got your last band? Like, what was the mindset when you hit the last 10K?
Well, so when I hit that lull, that was, I think I'd got my 2 bands. So I was on my, let's work this out. So the first band.
You'd done 20.
Second band, yeah. So I'd be on my 3rd loop. 1, 2. I can't remember how this worked out. But there was a one of the loops, one of the bands was the bad band. It was just getting through it. When you get that last one, it must have been the carbs that I'd eaten, because I did start taking some gels, but also the realization that you've only got one more loop to do.
And then it's over.
And then it's done. Yeah, that was very motivating. So yeah, I got my light blue band, I think it was. And it was like, yeah, here we go. It started to get a little bit like this, I don't know what time it is now. It's probably like 8 o'clock at night or something by this point, 7 o'clock at night. So yeah, the weather starts changing as well. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to finish in the dark. Like I've got to get this finished. So I started running again, and it was very much just a walk strategy in the end. It was just kind of get to that tree. Okay, have a little rest. Always a very slight incline. Okay, well, I'm going to walk that, and then I'll run the other side. So yeah, it was amazing getting that last band, because the guys that are giving you the bands as well, they're even just the smallest little motivational bit that people give you gives you so much of a boost. So if you're supporting any racing, even if you don't know them, just give them something, because you don't know where they are in their head. So these guys are going, right, our last one, well done. And it was like, that is my last one, isn't it? Yeah, last band. That is
really?
well done. Yeah,
double checking counting the bands.
Yeah, I did. I was making sure, and yeah, you basically, so you keep doing these loops and you run past the bit that you go up to finish the race. And I deliberately just ignored it every single time I ran past it. I just didn't even want to see it. So yeah, I did that. Finally got to the bit where you turn off, and that was the first time I let the emotions hit me for the day, because up until that point it was very much just process driven.
Just get to that corner.
Just get there. Just do that. Just get there. Where's your heart rate? Have you eaten? Like one foot in front of the other.
How far's the from turning off the main loop, if you like, to the finish line?
Probably about 100 meters.
Oh wow! So it's really suddenly intense.
Suddenly you take the turn. There's a first time finishers bell, apparently, which I completely missed. Steve tells a good story about what he did with it, but I'll let him do his own podcast maybe. But yeah, and as I looked at the sign, because the sign is like finishers and next loop. So I've been doing next loop, next loop, next loop.
You don't want to accidentally turn left.
Finally, I'm taking the right to the finishers, and I just put my hands on my head and I was like, oh my God, I've finished.
This is it.
I've actually finished. Yeah! And there's a video that Jem got of me just going absolutely bananas as I ran past, and everyone's, banging the side hoarding thing.
Through some
shouting.
wonderful editing, I'm going to insert that video as we finish off to kind of close the episode off, because we obviously only saw it when it was posted on your Instagram story, but we'd seen that you'd finished.
Yeah. And
we were envisaging like how buzzing, like emotional, like everything, and watching like both all the pictures, but the footage as well. Everything we would imagine that you would do on that last 100 meters was exactly what you did.
Yeah, I think it's such elation to finally finish. And I'd done a similar thing to the half at the Vitruvian in September. I hadn't planned to do that at all, but back in September, it was like, okay, well, this is a test to see whether I can actually do an Ironman, the dream. And I was so excited to get it done. I went crazy on that one as well. And then this, obviously finishing the race, it was just more like, yeah, it was absolute total elation. I can't quite explain. It was 2 years. It's 2 years of my life. 12 years since the seed was laid to actually do this. So to finally get to the thing and to hear the guy saying, "Phil, you are an Ironman," was just incredible. So yeah, I just did whatever I did.
Hop, skip, jump. I don't know how you jumped. Like, knowing how much pain you were in the weeks
Right.
before you went. I saw the video. I was like, how has he jumped pretty much across the finish line?
Well, I thought I jumped about 10 foot. And when you see the video, you'll see
a little skip.
I think I barely left the ground. Let's be brutally honest. But yeah, it was just incredible. Just getting through that finish line. Just incredible. And then, you get through the line, you get your photo. The photographer's like right in your face. And I was still just so happy and like, I don't know, I was kind of like angry in a way as well. Like, it was kind of like an FU to anyone or anything, even like my own thoughts that, to anybody, I don't know, it's really difficult to explain, right? So I think that a lot of what powered me forwards was just the worry of what other people were going to say and do. And I think a lot of the time we listen too much to what other or we listen to our own brains about what we think other people are thinking about us. And I think that one of the motivational things that I used was that I don't really know how to explain this, and you're going to have to edit this bit because I don't know how to kind of explain this, but it was kind of like I'd done it and I was just angry because I think I was angry at I cannot explain this actually.
So I'm thinking, obviously we've had quite a lot of these conversations now. I'm thinking to a few ones. We had episode, that was a test, somewhere in the mid 60s, 70s.
Oh, that's my favourite phase.
Yeah. We had the second former captain of the Red Arrows on.
Yeah.
And he talked about how 3 times he had been told, "You are not good enough for flight school."
Yeah.
And he says the first time you put on the red jacket, the reflection of all of those moments you've gone to where your mind or somebody else's words. Very recently, we had a lovely lady called Nat Hewitt on, who is a TV director, and she recounts very clearly someone saying to her in her early years in television, "You will never work in television. You will never work in documentaries. You will never do what your goal and your dream is."
Yeah.
And when the moment of realization comes, I've done it, you reflect back almost in a, like, not a childish as in a kind of petulant way, but like you reflect back as a child would to your childish self and go, "I did it. Like, I've done it." But there's a level of, I don't know. Yeah. It's quite hard to verbalize because it's almost, it's not a word. It's a feeling.
I mean, the closest phrase would be "F you," know. But it was more, so I think there's been quite a few times where, I'm going to do an Ironman, like 2 years ago or however long I'd said I was going to do it. I think a lot of people were like, yeah, cool. Yeah, all right, good luck with that then. So, and I can't really think of anyone specifically. But yeah, there's lots of times you'll meet people who doubt some of the things that you're suggesting you're going to do. And I think that really does hold us back just as humans. If someone's like, I don't know, like, I'm going to run a marathon, it's like, really? Because you've never done a 5K before. Like, you sure? Like, yeah, good luck with that. And then
you store that. I think you also when you're having the hard races, but certainly you put that in a locker. And when the arrival, whatever it is, of that moment comes, it just opens, and it's a locked bank of so many emotions and experiences. It's so hard to verbalize because it's not one thing. It's just you filed it. You filed that and gone, "I'll do it. I will get there."
Yeah. I guess we started talking about all this because I was talking about getting through the finish line and the photographer being there, and there's a good photo of me and in fact,
which we'll add.
Yeah, and you so kindly made it into a thing, and like I don't even know how to describe it, but like a
piece of art.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's awesome, and the words underneath it are very powerful. It was amazing. But that look of me looking very serious and very aggressive at the photographer it was just.
But hey, how many people have we had on the program, whether it's superstars in sport or whatever, but you see it in the Olympics every single time.
Yeah.
They have committed 12 years of their life and had all the doubts.
They're not smiling and like,
they touch the wall or they cross the line and they're going, wah! Because all of that it's the sacrifice, the cost, the emotion all comes out and it's just channeled to the world.
Exactly that, yeah. So that makes sense. Maybe I should have said that. I'm basically the same as an Olympian.
Yeah. That's going to be what we're going to use for the prints when we have your print. basically an Olympian.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. They've probably done 2 of the races that I did in the time I did my one. But yeah, it was massive. I mean, you get to the finish line, you get your medal, and then it was only, I sat down, there was like this big kind of monument thing behind the finish line where there's a few people sitting around, but it's just like a really inviting, massive granite step that I could sit my ass on. So I sat down.
And not have to have a gel.
And for the first time in 13 hours or whatever it was, I wasn't moving. And I sat down and I just started sobbing. Like, that was the big outpour of emotion, I think. It was allowing myself to consider how big what I'd just done was. Yeah, but then I quickly had to just, sort yourself out because,
the next one's coming through.
Yeah, no, I mean, so this is through the finish line. So the finish line photographer, and then behind all of that, you've got like the thing where you collect your bag and all that kind of stuff. So that's where this little space was. And I thought, I better go and say hello to everyone now. I've been here for 5 minutes, sort yourself out. That was really nice. And then, when I saw the family, gave them a hug. Which again was just amazing. They were crying, which set me up a bit. It was just,
they've been on a journey with you, and I think
exactly.
Let's not undersell that bit, like in the sense of how big you crossing the line was for them.
Yeah, big time. And again, like the emotions and the effort and the everything that Gemma put in, and James, he probably doesn't realise it, but all those times he's wanted to do stuff with Daddy, and Daddy's gone, can we make it a lying down game? Or come up on the sofa and let's play up here. Let's do cars on just this little section because I'm absolutely shattered, So, it's a big toll on everything, on your life. But it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. And I think that, if I can do it, I know there's loads of like, if I can do it, anyone can. But genuinely, if I can do it, anyone can. I really find it difficult to stick, or used to find it difficult to stick to training for more than like a couple of weeks because I just get bored because I'm not seeing the results immediately. Endurance was never my thing. I couldn't swim. When I first started swimming again, 4 years ago with you, I could only swim like one length, maybe 2 at a push. Running, I'd never really ran. In fact, I'd probably done about 2 or 3 10Ks, like British Heart Foundation 10Ks in my life. And that was epic for me. I've got the medals up, hanging up. So if I can do that, and if I can go from I think everybody was eating and drinking and was in such a bad state of health during, well, not everybody, obviously, but a lot of us kind of turned to just either drinking or, it was a very stressful time for everybody, wasn't it? So to go from there to be able to actually getting through an Ironman, if I can do that, genuinely believe that anybody can, anybody, it's a 17-hour cut off for most races. This one was 15 3/4 because it was flat basically. This is something I haven't mentioned, have I? It was an easy one. As Ironman's come,
easy.
This was quite an easy one. So I'd highly recommend this one actually for any listeners that are thinking of doing a race. Copenhagen is pretty cool as a good starting point. So if I can do it, anybody can. Genuinely, anybody.
Okay. So we're a month on now.
Yes,
And
quite literally, yeah.
I want to, in this episode,
Yeah.
and let's capture.
Oh my God, we have actually been here for a long time, and I know you're going to edit a lot of this stuff down, and I don't blame you because I have been waffling.
No, but the thing is that the whole point of capturing this is that it's whenever you have a conversation with someone and you're telling a story, it's not an edited down version. It's just an outpouring of the experience from your recollection of it. And I think a month on now, to be able to go, because at the time, you've got the adrenaline and all of that, then you've got the exhaustion, then you've got all of the maybe little injuries and the little niggles and all these things that then resurface. And then you go, okay, now what? So you're now 4 weeks on. So where's your head at on what have you maybe reflected on over the last 4 weeks that perhaps you didn't have at the time?
It took me, a week to actually be able to walk properly again. And not because I had any injuries or anything, because I was my muscles were just so depleted of everything. And also my brain just wasn't functioning properly for about a week. So that's a week written off out of the last month. The next week, you start to kind of come alive again, or I did anyway. Different people can recover differently, right? But for me, that was another week of just kind of written off. So that only really leaves 2 weeks-ish, the last couple of weeks. So I've, and again, pre-race, I'd read a lot of stuff about people who do these epic events, and then they kind of fall off a cliff and they get really depressed and really sad. And I would say I'm definitely susceptible to potentially, getting into a bad mental state. So I deliberately booked in a couple of races to give me something to train for. But the thought of doing any training.
Just hearing you say that, I'm like, what?
Well, genuinely. So I think I'm a big proponent of making sure that you look after your health and your health and well-being, and most importantly, well-being. We can come onto my life story and talk about my brother and stuff on another one. But you've really got to look after your brain. And I think that it might be hereditary, it might just be environmental, I don't know. But I was very aware that having done an Ironman, if I then go to nothing, that's not good, right? That's such a different position to be in, So the reason I put that kind of training thing,
was to keep the Phil.Fitness fans.
Basically, all you Phil.Fitness fans. I know you like a Phil.Fitness update, so I just wanted to keep you updated. No, so I booked a couple of 10Ks just to kind of do something, and I knew that running a 10K, even if I just jog it around, whatever, it wasn't that expensive to enter these things. And in fact, big shout out to Neil, he's actually paid for them, so I haven't paid a penny for it, but it's given me a reason to put my trainers on and get running again. So that's been really good. And also Steph, she's doing Ironman Barcelona. So I've gone on a few open water swims with her, which has been really good. And actually I'm the type of person who likes to share advice. And as you probably know, right?
Really?
Yeah. 3 hours later. Yeah. I've been here since Monday. It's now Thursday. But I like to share and help because I like to see people succeed. I genuinely have. That's why I do the job I do, right? People join the gym. A few months down the line, they're a better person. They're in better shape. They're in a better place mentally, physically, spiritually, whatever. So I like that. And I really think that you should ring fence that time to look after yourself because it's so important. It's the only thing you've got. And that was part of the realization of doing this Ironman 2 years ago and booking it. Was the realization that you do have to look after yourself, right? So, man, it's got deep. Bring me back up. Bring me back to the surface, Captain. No, it was, So what I've been doing post for the last kind of couple of weeks, I've started running again. I've got, my fitness is definitely there. I'm swimming still. I've got on Zwift a couple of times and done a couple of bike sessions. I'm just kind of enjoying not having the structure. Well, no, I'm not. I'm actually really not enjoying not having the structure. But I'm enjoying that I'm not enjoying it because I know that when I get back into the structure, I'm kind of looking forward to getting back into a big structured plan again, which I'm definitely going to be doing.
Did you hear that, Gemma?
Yeah, sorry, darling. No, but when we've already agreed, so we've had that conversation. I need to keep doing this because I'm in a better place mentally, health-wise. I'm in a better place. Everything that kind of is in my orbit is better because of me being
Fit and
healthy.
healthy.
Fit, yeah. And I think that's really important, especially doing the I was going to say like being the head of a family, but being like a leader, either in your job or at home or whatever, you have to be mentally strong, physically strong as well to a certain degree, but mentally strong to deal with the challenges and stuff. And
I think from like old self to new self as well, I think the mental resilience, and that was kind of that bit that I put on that picture was around like the role model and the way that people look up to you. And I think you probably won't see the ripple implications of that but in 2 years' time, someone will come up to you and go, somebody told me about what you did, or I saw what you did.
I saw you on Field Fitness.
I saw your thing on Field Fitness, whatever it is. But ultimately, you'll be having a conversation with James, and he'll go, I remember that. And that, again...
Well, I hope he does, actually. And that's a good point. Like, I don't know whether James is going to remember any of this. And again, that's why, another reason for doing the Instagram stuff. It's there, it's digital. It's not going to... I'm not going to lose it in a fire, or it's not going to get water damage or whatever. It's there, unless Elon Musk or whoever,
sticks it behind a paywall.
Yeah.
So what's the one... It's really hard to distill it down to one. There's so many things we've talked about today, but...
Yeah, I realise we've not covered any of... Like, you've got so many things on there that we've not talked about.
It's fine.
Yeah. Out of the 20, 30
weeks of prep.
Yeah, I know. Sorry, mate.
No, it's all good. I think, so, when you... Let's go back to pre-pandemic.
Yeah.
Let's go back to being able to swim less than 2 lengths without stopping.
Yeah.
And let's take over my position as the coach, and you're swimming up and down the pool and looking up going, Jesus Christ, what have I signed up for? What are you going to, now having seen not just that you finished it, but all of the peripheral benefits and stuff that have come with it, what's been the biggest takeaway that, forget everyone else out there, but for you, what's the biggest thing you've taken away from this?
The biggest takeaway from completing an Ironman?
This whole experience, this journey over the last 2 years.
Give me a minute.
It's okay. Press pause.
Just skip forwards. The biggest takeaway. I mean, look, you learn so much about yourself, and that sounds like such a, when you listen to these things, like, oh, it's a journey of self-discovery. It is though, because you don't really know how you're going to react to certain things unless you give it a go. But you don't know how you'll react to stress unless you put yourself in a stressful situation. So it's a real journey of just working out how your own brain works, basically. Which again, I really have enjoyed. I think I've got a much better understanding of who I am and how I work and what works for me and what doesn't work for me. And I think the implications of that is Gemma, my wife, she knows now that there's a lot of things like the structured training approach really helps. Structure in general, like from a day-to-day basis, really helps me. Work, I think they understand that they will give me time to train. Like they'll actively encourage it because we're in that industry as well. They understand even more. But that's really cool. So I think my biggest single takeaway would be, for me personally, that I can do anything. Like you can do anything if you wanted to, and you can only do it once you commit to it and you say, I'm going to do it. But once you've made that decision to do it, you can do anything. So I proved that to myself. Once I've made a decision, if I actually really want to do it, I can do it. And I did it.
Well, I think that was a really nice way to put it all together. And I think we are going to do a volume 2 because, to be honest, your whole journey's been incredible. And I'm sure there's lots of other stuff.
You've got 25 other questions.
I've been reusing those questions again. But it's been really interesting because, in our first couple of seasons, we had an Ironman world champion on and her coach and husband, Lucy and Reese, which I'm sure many of the Ironman followers will know.
Which is mad as well, by the way. Like, you're friends with them, and she and Reese, they're both a massive inspiration. I subscribe to her channel. I watch all her stuff. You know, I've followed her sister on Instagram because she's an amazing photographer as well. Like, and the fact that you're friends with her and I'm now in that is just amazing. I just wanted to say that. Like, honestly, I'm super chuffed and buzzing.
But I think that's one that kind of my athlete journey. When I think back to my early years, I remember going to, I think it was the Olympic trials or world trials, or whatever it was. And I remember my coach saying to me, you have got to stop seeing people who do exactly what you do as otherworldly, because whilst you put them on that pedestal, you will never be in the same sphere as them. And there are very few people I know, bearing in mind I've rolled in quite a lot of sports circles, who can do what you've done. And that's why I wanted to share this story, because you don't have to be an elite athlete, but you have to A, commit, and B, see it through. Because it would have been very easy when that knee happened. I was looking for that excuse.
Yeah.
Or do the half and it got short and, oh, well, that's it now, that's over. It's very easy to walk away from something that you put yourself in a space where you could go either way. And I think to have got to the point where you have now and actually reflect on it, that you can do it if you genuinely commit yourself to it.
Yeah.
You are in a space that not a lot of people probably exist in. They want to exist in. And that's why I wanted to share this story today, because I think that a lot of people can take something away from.
Yeah. Well, good. And I hope it has been some kind of, inspiration to people. All jokes aside, again, I said it a minute ago, but about half an hour ago now. If I can do it, anybody can, and you've just got to get on with it. And that's another thing I've kind of realised, right? Excuses for stuff. Like, some people's excuses for certain things, they're so rubbish. They're so wet and weak. If you really wanted to do whatever you're saying you can't do, you'd find a way, right? But yeah, I think, and triathlon gives you the options as well, if I'm honest. Like, I've chosen quite a nice sport that suits my brain quite well, because like you said, the knee went, all right, cool, well, let's just concentrate on cycling and swimming. There's other things that you can keep doing to move forwards. And actually, that was the phrase that I wanted to think of, a phrase to help me get through this whole race and whole journey. And I was Googling stuff, and I was going to write it on my arm and all sorts, but always forwards is what I landed on. Because no matter what I'm doing in my life or in my training or whatever, as long as you're moving forward, as long as it's one step closer to whatever that goal is, then it's fine. So always forwards. That would be my closing remark, guys. Always forwards.
And I didn't even have to create that. That's given me a nice title for the episode. Phil, it's been absolutely awesome. But I said we will be visiting this back. I'm going to very subtly fade out of this, and we're going to drop into the video of you crossing the finish line. But thank you so much for your time. It's been absolutely
thank
awesome.
you, mate. Thanks for inviting me, mate. Honestly, I feel like I'm so privileged to be in this show with the likes of some of the people you had on here. So I'm super chuffed. Thank you, mate.
Cool. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, mate.
Thank you again there to Phil. It was super fun to explore his triathlon journey, and I really hope you've taken something from our conversation today. Always forwards. I think that's something we can all use. You can connect with Phil and his page, phil.fitness, in the show notes. Make sure you've hit subscribe however you're joining us today, and be sure to check out our Etsy store, where some of our favourite quotes from the show are now available in a beautiful clean print format, allowing us to continue growing and investing in the show. I hope you enjoyed our conversation today, and will join us again soon for another episode of the Road Monkey Podcast.